I had fairly recently, I work with half a dozen clients, agency leaders, and two of the people I'm working with have had considerable success in increasing their fees. And I know learn how to triple your fees or more is just such a cheesy title for a presentation. But the reality is this is what these guys have done. And in fact, one of them has done more than that. So rather than write another blog about it, I just thought I'd share some thoughts and maybe just explore why we don't sometimes charge as much as we could, and maybe share some experiences. And there's a good handful of a dozen or more agency people in the room here. So I'm going to jog you through a couple of quick. They're not even case studies; they're just thoughts, really, and some takeaways. And then maybe we can kind of do a bit of group think around what could we all do this afternoon that would mean that we could charge our clients more and get more value from, or rather get more revenue from the work that we're doing. So the subtitle is charge for your value you create rather than for your time. So that's the clue. If you do leave now, then you've pretty much got the whole point of the presentation. So well done. This is a first pancake. This is the first pancake, and this is the first pancake. If you've ever cooked, you'll know that the first pancake tends to be a bit of a mess and doesn't come out looking as pretty as it should. This is the first time we've used LinkedIn events. This is the first time I've done as etc. A presentation of this type. You'll notice by the fact we changed the date and we had to change the link. We got lots and lots of things wrong. I hope this isn't going to be a complete faff, but so apologies for it being a first pancake, but you're in early doors, so you're getting to see all the good stuff, I hope. But if I'm not doing this stuff and I'm not learning, then I guess I'm not being as helpful to my clients as I could be. So it has been slightly chaotic, but hopefully the information is going to be helpful. Can you guys see all of that screen, or are the faces, you can read those words?
Yep. Good.
So very, very quickly, in case anyone doesn't know me, and I know lots of people do, I work with founders in agencies, if you want to call it that, so businesses which are sort of intermediaries to shift from startup to scale up to grow up, primarily by providing a mixture of objectivity, experience and encouragement in pretty equal measure, I guess. Sometimes it's useful advice, sometimes it's framework, sometimes it's just someone to shout at, whatever my clients need, but it seems to have some to work for people, which is great. So that's it, end of the selling. I'm sitting here, the few people I can see, including Jess and Natalie, probably don't even know what that picture is. That's Oliver from Oliver Twist in the famous and cringeworthy film from the 1960s, where Oliver stands in front of all of the other kids in front of this really angry man and says, "Please, sir, can I have some more?" And it is really hard to ask for more. And everyone in the room, you can't quite see him in that photograph, is looking at him and going, well, how's he had the temerity, that little child, to go and ask that enormous angry man for more? And of course, what happens and what we're trained is that the man turns around and goes, "More, what do you," and chases him around the room and tries to beat him up. So, we are hard coded to find it difficult to ask for more, and in this case, putting up fees. And I call this the Oliver Principle, asking for more. And this is how the Oliver Principle works. So if you ask for more fees, in our case, you will upset the client. They will no longer trust you, and they'll start noticing stuff that you don't do very well. They'll start looking at other providers when they phone them up, because we know that all our clients get approached all the time. Other providers will pile in with better, cheaper, newer, more fascinating things. The client will then decide, I feel like you're doing okay, you're doing the best, you've generated more revenue than you've ever done for us, but I'm just going to pitch the work out and see who else is out in the market. You'll spend a fortune on the pitch and you'll lose, because only 1 in 10 agencies retain clients in those circumstances, which is true stat. Your confidence will drain from your business. Your best people will go because they're only with you because you've been successful. You'll be working even longer hours for less reward. Your personal life will start to fail. You'll end up living under a bridge. Let's not ask the client for more money. That's the Oliver principle. And I know it's true, at least in one case, because that's how I used to think about it. Maybe not all that far. I haven't yet ended up living under a bridge. But you kind of get yourself into a headspace where you think, if I ask the client to pay what this is actually really worth, and typically, I guess you've got maybe a bad service level agreement or no service level agreement. You agreed to do something relatively cheaply to get the client through the door and then convince yourself you could put the fees up later. There's any number of reasons why you might be providing more value than you're charging for. But there's a myth that if you say to the client, I believe I'm providing this much value, I'd like to charge you the appropriate amount for that, that they will go through the Oliver principle. And they don't. They just simply don't do that. And that's not what happens. They may be irritated if you ask in the wrong way. They may be irritated if you ask at the wrong time. If you've just messed a job up and your team of, for the third time, there's a typo in the report that they've got to take to their chief executive, and then you go, by the way, we'd like to triple our fees. Probably not gonna go as well as you might. But the Oliver principle is something that exists in people's heads but doesn't exist in reality. This is Whistler's mother. Well, I think it's actually called The Artist's Mother, the painting. I can't remember. I studied The Artist's Mother. Someone more knowledgeable than me will know the proper title. But Whistler is the person who had the original quote when he did a painting for someone and charged them a lot of money. This was in 17-something. The lady said, well, how come you charge me? I don't think it was his mother saying this. How come you charge me so much for that? And he said, well, it's the labor of 2 days, but it's the knowledge of a lifetime. Often misattributed to Picasso, I think, but it was Whistler. And the point he was making was that it took him 2 days to paint the painting, but it's the knowledge of a lifetime that went into creating that painting. And he's saying it's the value of what I've created, not the time it took. And that's not the only principle behind charging more for what you do, but it has value beyond simply the time it took. And for an awful lot of agencies, we end up in a position where we are charging for time and we go, it took more hours, so we're going to charge you more time. If we look at it the other way around and say, what's the value to the client, then the conversation becomes a bit different. And the way we think about what we charge becomes a little bit different. And some nuance to that. So I'll come to that. So this is the first, this is close to a case study as I'm ever going to get. So this particular client, I've called it Right Clients, No Self-Belief. And this is an absolutely brilliant agency. Hannah, are you with us yet?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm going to embarrass you by flattering you for a second, but I'm going to ask Hannah to chip in. So a really, really capable client in agency, working in a niche, but charging an hourly rate for the work and also a low hourly rate for the work. But the clients undoubtedly valued the service. There's more demand. This is an agency with no shortage of demand. Lots of people want to work with this agency. So there's demand, but there isn't enough capacity. And also, I know that Hannah found herself giving away time, doing far more than the scope of the work, over-servicing. We all recognize these things that we do. We want our clients to be happy. We're relatively new in the market and we want to establish our brand. But being highly specialized and in a niche, but relatively inexperienced and lacking the confidence to say to a client, this is the value I'm bringing and this is what I'm going to charge you, meant that Hannah's agency weren't charging enough for their work. And we had a conversation about this. And this is the constant thing that amazes me is the willingness, the sort of creativity and willingness and just nerve of people that run agencies to try something new. We talked about packaging, what I call packaging, but it's if what you're doing, if you say, I'm going to give you 10 hours of work and I'm going to charge you 10 times my hourly rate for it, it's not surprising that clients are going to go, well, then that's fine. If you say, I'm going to provide you with some strategy, I'm going to provide you with a plan, maybe some gap analysis, some research, some bang, 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 package it all up into something that has real value to the client. And the point of all this is that you will gain these advantages. The client is far more likely to accept any price that you put to them if they perceive that as valuable. But astonishingly, I say this stuff and then I go away and, make a sandwich or do something else. What Hannah then did is she then went to a prospective client and went, this is what we do. So Hannah, could you tell us what you did?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been approached by a new client and it was quite a large job and I wasn't sure how to pitch it because up until that point, we've been really charging by hour. And I always made it very clear in proposal, it's going to take us that many hours. This is our hourly rate. And I was very transparent about it. And I pride myself in it. But what it really did is that it attracted those price sensitive customers rather than those who were searching for quality. And we are building up our reputation on the fact that we are actually doing a really, really great job. And if we are unable to do it within, that set amount of hours, which we have initially agreed to, we will go out of our way to make sure they're happy. So when I was doing a new proposal, Andy suggested to focus more on our process. And I think looking now back, it makes so much sense because if you look at, let's say, a luxury brands, they focus so much time and energy at explaining the process, how all of those things come together and what makes them so special. So I think I have added in our presentation about 10 to 15 slides, which were just focusing on our process, how we take things stage by stage, very, very logically. And we ended up actually closing the client. In terms of price, Andy asked me to sort of, take my hourly rate and then how many days it's going to take. And then he made me basically triple and a half my hourly rate. And it was very scary. And he kept saying, just be brave. And I started sort of thinking, it's fine. If it works out, it doesn't work out, doesn't matter. I'll just hear the feedback. And client actually came back and said, this is a really great proposal. Yeah, we would like to go ahead. And I actually have another example as well. I was approached by this large international company for one of their divisions. They were looking to maybe do some ads, some social media, stuff like that. I submitted a proposal and later I find out that it was us, the market specialist for that sort of niche and well-known PR company which handles that area of the market. The project went under in the end, but our proposal, because we really went logically through the step, through the process, without giving away too much for free, they were so impressed that they ended up taking us on for the entire company, for their social media marketing rebrand. So it really works. And just showing it by hours, they will focus on hours and they will focus on how much we charge per hours and how much we can do through that time, which automatically sets a really wrong mindset. But rather talking about process we take, stages we take, and all of it, and then just put one price on it, I find out that really, really helped to reframe the client's mindset.
Fantastic, Hannah. Thanks for sharing that. And that wasn't rehearsed. I mean, Hannah last night asked if she could come along to this thing, and I just said, can I lob a hand grenade at you and just get you to talk? So I didn't know about that second case. That's fantastic. And whilst you were talking, I think there were things I was thinking about. Simply changing the way you think about your services allows you to think differently about your clients and about the sort of clients you want to work with, and how you might start gaining more value from the effort that you put in. So Hannah, thank you for sharing that. It's fantastic. We're going to have it's not a Q&A, it's just a kind of conversation at the end if everyone wants to. So I've allowed some time for that. Maybe we can get some more out of Hannah or just share experiences, because
or get some more out of other people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is remarkably common. So there's a thought here, which is people who work with me will know this, because I've only got about 6 things I can share with agencies, and I just keep saying them repeatedly, and it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. So I think there's a thought here for larger agencies. So I work with independent agencies. I don't work with the network agencies. So broadly, my advice here is about businesses who are probably under 150 people. My sweet spot is somewhere between 10 and 50, 60, 70 maybe. But I think this principle holds true, because if you're I think we've got someone. I just see someone from Born Social pop up on here, maybe. But you know, a larger independent agency, you can go, well, how do I triple my fees? It's not that easy. I'm not relatively new to the market. We're a mature provider with mature audiences. But I think what you can do is if you start to break down your services and your service proposition, then you can find areas where you're not charging enough for what you're doing, where you're not charging the value. And quite often this is in things we give away. So one of the things I think about is I think this was Results International came up with this idea, but there's a continuum of what we do as a provider. There's at one end there's do for me, in the middle there's help me think, and then at the far end there's think for me. I see Born appear. I see it appear. But you know, do for me is just churning through the generic sorts of agency activity where you can add no value to it. You're simply just doing stuff for me, and your relationship with your client is you are a provider of services. You just do stuff for them. Normally, most agencies are doing if you think of this as a continuum, they're doing something along the lines of do for me to help me think. And help me think is where you're saying to the client, we understand your challenges a bit more, and we can help you work out how what we do can help you solve your problems. Think for me in my world is typically the big consulting firms where they're driving strategic thinking, where most independent agencies generally don't find themselves. But if you just think about that continuum and where the different services you provide sit, some will probably be do for me services, but some will be help me think services. And it's those kind of things. If you can identify them, give them a name, package them, you stand more opportunity of saying, well, we can charge for those. And very often agencies give that stuff away. When you pitch, you do the strategy for free, you do the creative for free. And I understand why we do it. And you can go, Andy, it's very easy for you to suggest we should charge for that because you don't have to do it anymore. It's true. And I'm not saying in pitches you should charge for it, but you should definitely label it and give it a name and recognize its value. And if you're giving it to a client, tell them what it would cost them and then discount it for them. So you can say, and we're in the pitch, we're going to give you this £20,000 worth of work for free. So I think the do for me, help me think, and think for me is a really helpful way of you just sort of break up what you do. And I'm not even sure if this is the next point. It's not. So I'm going to say it here because it occurs to me. Account management is one of my real bugbears in this space. And again, this is probably one of the 6 things I say to my clients. So they've all heard this before and zoning out. But if you talk about account management to your clients, first of all, that tells them they're an account, which is effectively a cow that you want to milk. You know, your relationship with them is an account. That means it's someone who you get money from. And management is basically controlling them and telling them, you know, basically just, you know, managing them. It's controlling them. And account management is not a helpful thing to talk to any client about. So quite often we talk about client services as a sort of generic term, which is you are a client. And so you are, you know, we're in service to the client, and services to you as we want to be of service. It's great. But then when we charge our clients for things, we go, oh, we can't charge for client services, or we don't charge much for client services, or it comes out of the fee, it comes out of the commission because they don't really want to pay for it. Well, frankly, if clients don't want to pay for something, if they don't value it, then don't do it. And the reality is, if you broke down account management into what it really is and think on the do for me and help me think spectrum, there's everything in account management, from project management to strategy and planning to reporting to, if you break down account management, you could then put it on the do for me, help me think for me continuum and go, now, if we told them it was project management and that if they're not going to pay for it, then we're not going to do it. So there'll be no project management. Would they pay for it? Of course they would. They would value project management more than they value account management. So I think there are lots of ways you can think about what you do. And that's just one clear example for me, and think about how you break those down into components. So even larger agencies, there are definitely areas in your business where you could recognize where you're providing value, recognize where you're perhaps not communicating it clearly enough, packaging it up well enough, making the benefits obvious enough, differentiating it enough, and then talk to clients about whether they value that or not, and if they do, how much you're charging for it. Caveat here, I know this is much, much easier with new business than with existing clients. So if you've got legacy clients, this is more subtle and nuanced, but you can still have the conversations. And if you've got SLAs and if you've got service, scope of works, you can always go back to those. I've got a client yesterday, we had a conversation, they've gone back to the scope of works and they've said to the client, we recognize that, you know, we've been going over servicing the business because we're invested in your success, but we don't think you realize that we're putting all this extra time in, and we've never told you we're putting all this extra time in. We need to have a conversation about it. We're coming up to next year's renewal for the retainer, and a really healthy conversation has kicked off with the client now about what the client does value and what the client doesn't value. And what they've discovered is half of all these things they were doing extra for nothing, the client doesn't give a damn about. So they're just wasting their time. So, but half of the things the client really did value, and then they can have a conversation. So I may be telling you all how to suck eggs, but these things do kind of all sit together, I think, for me. So the second case study, in effect, was a while ago now, but certainly in COVID, so in the last year. And it's I was working with a research company, and they had clients who would say things like, the research you provide is basically, you know, it's Google plus. You know, if we had the time, we could go on Google and find out this information. And it's palpably not true. These guys have a really sophisticated service proposition. It's extremely high value services they provide. They combine incredible skills and very expensive researchers with a technology that they've created and a certain level of some other controls which allow them to provide information that other people simply can't provide right now. But they would regularly get pushed. But well, you know, this is just online information. This is just Google, and we don't value it. Added to which, and by the way, consulting firms were doing the same thing less well, but charging thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds for it. So work that one out if you can. The other thing was that this client was calling the output, the thing that they handed over for the cash, a report. And I, you know, if I'd had any hair left, I would be tearing it out. It is not a report. What you're providing is massive intelligence, which allows these companies to make multi-million-dollar decisions about their businesses, which is informed by the sort of incremental intelligence that you're providing to them that nobody else in the world can do currently, as well as you can. So it is not a report. You are selling these incredible insights. And if you go to your clients and say, here's the report, then what they're going to buy from you is a report. So it's no surprise that they're not really valuing the work that you've got. So a couple of combinations here. One is that they were talking to clients who didn't value what they did, and then they weren't valuing what they did themselves. But in there was a truth, which was the businesses that they should be talking to are the ones that recognize the value of a marginal gain. If you can get a tiny advantage, the tiny advantage for some of these sorts of businesses means that they're going to win. They don't need to win by much. They just need to be slightly better than everybody else, and they win. And then you can charge them for that value. And this is he's not here today, but this is very like Hannah. We had this conversation and we sort of explored this idea. And he charged for a report 5K. Charges 5K for a report. And that's a report that could, and I've got to stop doing that, note to self. It's a report that impacts millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of decisions in the client organizations. So we had this conversation. He went back to actually a client he'd already been talking to. That night, it turned out, I didn't know he was going to do it. Phoned me the following morning and said, I had a conversation with the client. We've agreed on 25 grand. I said, what have you agreed for 25 grand? He said, well, we're now charging them 25 grand for the report, but we don't call it a report anymore. We've kind of packaged it up and done something with it, and we've given it a name, and they get that. And we've told them what they're getting and why it's useful and where it comes from and its provenance and its quality, and we built a story around it. And this client's very happy with that, and he's bought it. And I'm constantly amazed at the confidence and the is it chutzpah, is that the word, of people who just agency owners, the things you guys do when you're convinced enough to give it a go. Not only then has that client now paying that client now has a name for that product. They know that there's a service there and it's got a name, and they know it costs 25k, and they've been back and bought versions of that product multiple times this year. And now they're at the point where they just phone up and they go, yeah, we'd like one of those, I don't know, call it a Jeffrey. It's not called a Jeffrey, I'm not allowed to tell you, but we'd like a Jeffrey. They know it costs 25k. There's no discussion about it. There's no need to have a discussion about it. They come in and they're buying multiple times. They're coming back and buying these services. It's an absolute game changer for this business. It's changed the way they think about how they go about approaching clients, what clients they talk to, the confidence they have in the way they're talking about their services. Repositioning is happening. A whole lot of other things are happening too. And again, I know this is quite a specific service, but I would break down your services if you're thinking, well, Andy, I can't do that with PPC. I can't triple my charges on PPC, but there are things you're doing. PPC implementation and management might be do for me, but what about help me think? Are you training your clients around PPC? I'm just picking PPC as an example. Are you running training courses so they get better at it, so that they understand more about it? Are you providing paid search strategy? Are you providing thinking about where paid search sits amongst the other search options, or amongst the other digital options, or amongst all of the other marketing options? And what are you charging for that, or are you just giving that away? So I think there's opportunities to look at what clients are paying for and what they value. I'm just checking the time. Crikey, push on. One thing to note, that's a beach hut in Sandbanks, not mine, in Dorset, and it's just changed hands for £360,000. I mean, I'm just staggered. If all of you haven't fallen off your chairs, there's something wrong with the world. It's £250,000. But house price rules. The value of a house, the value of a service is decided by the buyer, not the seller. Is it valuable to me? Can I get utility from it? Someone has decided that it's worth 350 grand to have a beach hut on Sandbanks next to what looks like an abattoir. So good luck to them. Who knows? So it's something to remember, that what is the value of something? What do they consider to be valuable? And are you considering its value as well? That's just a little thought starter there. So I'm just going to move this because I can't read my own points. Oh, no, I very nearly turned everything off then. Hold on. Just need to move you all. I've got all sorts of things all over the screen, so I can't actually read all this. I'm just trying to remember what I was trying to say, really. So the value is determined by the buyer, not the seller. That's the point I just made. Where's the real value in what you do? I am going to move you because I'm really... There we go. Are your clients paying for the value, or are they paying for something else? And where are you on that spectrum? Someone, I guarantee, is charging more than you're charging, always. So how are they getting away with that? And who's paying for that? And why are they paying that? And what is that other somebody saying about what they do? The same thing as you, but they're charging more for it. What are they saying about that? And why is the client paying them money for that? It's just another way of looking at the same problem. Could you be charging more? Think about maybe breaking up your services. How do others, how much are other people charging for those things? Do you know what other people are charging? Have you got any sense of benchmarking your prices against other people? And there's lots and lots of benchmarking reports out there, but most of those go back to pretty primitive agency models around how we charge for what we charge. If you start fragmenting your service proposition from a pricing point of view, then you start to get a better sense. What the clients pay for other things. I put PwC here because it wasn't PwC, but I don't want to name the consulting firm. When I was MD at Agenda 21, A21 to its mates, Vodafone was one of our largest clients. And we were charging about £900 a day, and we charged per day. And then my team kept coming back saying they're working with, let's call them PwC. And those guys they don't charge a day rate, they charge for a project, but we've worked it out because all of my guys were analysts. And they said, that's about $3,500 a day. Why are we charging 900 quid? And we're doing the same job. And they were right. So we had a conversation with Vodafone. We talked about what we were doing, what they valued and what they didn't value so much, what they considered to be do for me and what they considered to be help me think and think for me. And we restructured the agreement. And I think, to my knowledge, Agenda 21 is still working with Vodafone and have won multiple awards for doing it. So you can do it. Agenda was 80, 90 people at that point, and Voda is, you've all heard of it. So it's a big company. Simple stories, easy to buy. People buy packaging. You sell the sizzle, not the sausage, all those expressions. But I think if you make your services easy to consume, thinking back to the client who gave his reports a name as a process and as a thing, then it does make it an awful lot easier. So packaging more specific services will help, I think. Does it have a name? Have you defined it? Are the benefits clear? We talked about account management. That's where it was. It was on this slide. And then do you have a rate card, even if it's internal? I mean, I wouldn't suggest you share an external rate card necessarily, but do you know what you should be achieving for the time of your team? So there's an equivalent hourly rate, but if you actually are charging properly for what you do, you will go back and look at those hourly rates and go, Christ, that we're charging an awful lot more than we used to, because we're charging for the value of what we provide rather than, so you tell your team what you want to achieve for the time rather than them charging something very simple for the time. And if you have got a rate card, why are you charging? And could you go the other way and say, well, if we look down the other end of the lens, would we be charging different rates, and would we put it together? And do we tell our clients we charge by the hour, or do we charge for the services that we provide? So that's a real quick run through. I just wanted to kind of share the thought of the potential to be bold about this. I'm always happy to talk. I missed one build, so that's going to build very slowly for us. I've got a fortnightly, soon to be weekly but shorter email called Rambling On, which has this sort of stuff in it. If you want to go to it, etc. If you want to abuse me like someone did this morning by not reading one of my posts properly, go to my LinkedIn profile. A long story, I won't share it, and my other details are there.